All right, so the performance concepts, it sounds like the performance B, the combustion engine STI concept, that is the one that you're most excited about.
I think for the general enthusiast, the same thing could be said because it's a more tangible thing. Not only is it something we've been looking forward to and asking for, and it seems that Subaru has listened, they also are laying out a long-term time frame. And I think what that does is it sets up the enthusiast expectation. This way, I think they're warming us up.
Many people, when they buy an STI, that is their daily driven car. STI is like, you can drive this thing every day. It's snowing. Perfect.
Mhm.
Having a wagon, having a hatchback, it makes it like you can do almost anything with this car.
Yes.
I'm gonna take friends up skiing. We're gonna take the STI. I'm gonna
hmm
go camping. Let's take the STI. Like there's almost nothing once you have it as a hatchback that you can't do with the
Exactly.
STI. I mean, the STI is like the Swiss Army knife of sports cars, and I think that what I like is that this connects to that.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the Flatiron Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. This show is brought to you by Flatiron's Tuning, your source for any aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts. Be sure to check out our store at flatironstuning.com and stay tuned with Flatiron's Tuning.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Flatiron Syndicate Podcast. We're here again with Art from Overtake USA because Art, I think you and I are kindred spirits in that whenever Subaru makes an announcement like this, we really like to really hyper-focus, nerd out,
hmm
try and read the tea leaves of what Subaru is doing. And man, with all of this big news that has been announced at the Japan Mobility Show with the two STI
hmm
concepts, I think this is a conversation that needed to happen. So I'm glad you're able to make the time to come on again.
Yeah, and I'm glad for you having me on. I mean, it was about a month ago where Justin and I sat down with you. We had a nice conversation. So it is
Yeah.
nice to be back and with big news to talk about. And I think the reason we get so excited about, we've been in the Subaru game for decades now. And so
Yeah.
these big events happen on average, maybe 3 to 5 years. It seems like we have a
Yeah.
new major model announcement or some change up or a major cancellation like the STI getting pulled. And now it's back on the table. So, it
Yeah.
seems like there's a long gap between these events, but at the same time, I don't know, it goes by in a flash.
Well, that means that there's more significance, and this really
Right.
feels significant. Um,
hmm
and so this is why it's worthy of conversation. But so let's start there. Like, what is your top line reaction after seeing, the announcement, after seeing the concepts? What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, the last 24 hours has been absolutely crazy. Just going into the live session, I think I set bigger expectations that were a little bit dashed as the live session wrapped up. In my mind, for some reason, I thought they would have this tremendous announcement, really go into detail, give us price points, availability, specs, power figures, and I think I was just being a little too excited and a little naive of what we were actually going to get because at the end of the day, they unveiled two concepts and they had a 15-minute time slot. They couldn't possibly go through that and the performance and adventure sides of the business and go into detail on all of it. So I had tons of excitement going into it. The live session really deflated me, especially because it's like
Mm,
12:30 at night here. You're tired. You were looking forward to something, and all of a sudden you didn't really get it. So I made a quick video, put it up on our social, and just said, hey, honestly, I'm disappointed with what I saw. There were some renderings in the live session itself. They pulled the cover off the Performance E, but the Performance B was off screen. And
yeah.
so, I felt a little bit of that was a slap to the audience that wasn't there at the mobility show. And so once that wrapped, I felt a totally different way than when it started. And then as the attendee media started flowing in, the very first picture I saw within about a half hour was somebody took from the passenger window the transmission, the 6-speed shift knob.
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
And that turned me around. And from there, all the media that flooded in immediately just got me so excited again. And I've been riding that wave for the last, 16 hours now. So,
Yeah. It's really interesting. All right. So now really important here that there's 2 points that Subaru is trying to make with this press conference.
mhm,
That there was two aspects they wanted to they said elevate or emphasize, which is performance and adventure. And the performance side of it, of course, was the STI concepts. Then what was really interesting to me is the adventure side. That's now the EV concepts, the
mhm.
Solterra, Overtake. I'm sorry, not Overtake.
A trail
Uncharted and Trail
seeker.
Seeker.
Yeah.
So all of those, they're putting that under the adventure category, which I think is really interesting.
Mhm.
But all right, so the performance concepts, it sounds like the performance B, that the combustion engine STI concept, that is the one that you're most excited about, has your attention for the most, or more than
Yeah, and
the other one.
I think for the general enthusiast, the same thing could be said because it's a more tangible thing. Not only is it something we've been looking forward to and asking for, and it seems that Subaru has listened, and we'll get into that in greater detail about what they actually debuted with the Performance B, but they also are laying out a long-term time frame. And I think what that does is it sets up the enthusiast expectation. And so if Subaru didn't say anything about the STI and then all of a sudden dropped the EV concept, I think a lot of people would be disappointed because they would feel like they got shortchanged from having the best STI model. It's almost like
Hmm.
they canceled it, forgot about it, and then introduced something. This way, I think they're warming us up. And I said this in the last conversation, and I'm sticking to it. I think we're getting this 3 to 5 year gap of the combustion STI. In one of my videos, I called it the Swan Song STI because I think
Mm.
what they did is they shoved all the best of the stuff that they have in it, and they're kind of nodding at the enthusiast and saying, "This is it. This is the one. You wanted the best combustion STI. We just built it for you," assuming they actually put it into production to debut it. And then after that, no more bitching. The EV is coming, and that's going to be in a totally different performance level and a totally different type of customer potentially. But everyone was satisfied with the B. And so to me,
Mm.
this is a 7 to 10 year play for them by introducing both models.
Hmm. So to that, so the presenter of this press release was Atsuki Osaki, who is the
Mhm.
CEO of Subaru. He's only been the CEO for, I believe, 2 years. I think he stepped in 2023.
Mhm.
And I kind of am of the opinion that this is like the first time that he is really kind of revealing what his vision is,
Mhm.
that for the direction that he wants to take Subaru in. I think, if he came in, I want to say it was late 2023, so there's obviously no time to make any changes there. And 2024, maybe everything is still in motion enough to the point where he cannot course correct at all yet. I think this is possibly
Mhm.
the first inkling that we're seeing from like the direction that he now wants to move the brand of Subaru in. And I feel like I heard that he actually was an enthusiast. He's been working at Subaru since 1988. He
Oh.
has an engineering background. He's been like, so he's got a lot of experience working up through the levels of manufacturing. I think at one point he was in the engine department.
Mhm.
But I also have heard that he was a rally driver, like, or a competition driver. And like if you think about that and you watch this presentation, then all of this really starts to fall into place, especially focusing on
Mhm.
the performance aspect for Subaru.
Well, and the
So
one thing
very
that I
interesting
really
there.
did like about the live session, despite the lack of details, was their emphasis on performance because
Yep.
half the video was allocated to that. It was the first thing they highlighted. Some of the heritage footage that they showed of WRXs and STIs competing, that made a really good impression on me that yes, they are putting performance at the forefront because they could have said, "This is the Subaru presentation. It's all about efficiency and sustainability." And
Yep.
then all of a sudden, alarm bells are going off that there's not going to be any performance cars coming up.
Right.
But yeah, I think he stepped up and really laid out the roadmap in a general sense for Subaru.
Yeah. Well, so all right, I have a question for you. Of all
Mhm.
of the cars that were on display for this presentation, which one do you think was the most significant?
Ooh, significant. Ah,
Hmm.
man, there's so many directions you could take that in because you could say the Performance E, surprisingly enough, might be the most significant thing on there because that is the long-term performance strategy of Subaru. Like I said, I think that's the 7 to 10 year plan, and we're gonna wake up one day where there is no combustion performance Subaru potentially, but you maybe have a lineup of EV. Maybe there'll be
Yeah.
a detuned WRX fully electric, and then the STI with a 0 to 60 of 1.9 seconds, something that would be unheard of for STIs
Right.
of the past. And
Yeah.
so I think that is significant because that's where we're heading. Then you can look at the other direction, the Huckster being up there, I think has a significance because, as they mentioned, they go back to
Yeah.
their heritage so much that, I mean, this is it's kind of a cool thing that they presented because that's not really driving sales for them, especially future sales. So the fact that they would highlight
Yeah.
that is, I think, it's pretty special.
I actually think the Huckster being front and center, it was present behind the CEO for the whole presentation, and the fact that it's there, I think that is actually the most significant car on
Hmm.
that stage.
Hmm.
Here's why. So, all right, so that is made by Vermont Sports Car. Vermont Sports Car is not Subaru. So, like, you have
Hmm.
Subaru of Japan, there's Subaru of America, there's a couple other Subaru divisions across the world. Vermont Sports Car is their own company. Yes, they're contracted by Subaru and they build all these cars. They support the Subaru Rally Team, but it's not specifically Subaru.
Hmm.
I cannot recall a time, especially in Japan, for any of the releases of anything in Japan or any of these motor shows, where they've actually taken something, especially something that's a custom one-off that Vermont Sports Car or any other company has made and brought it over there. I
Right.
think the closest example would be a WRC rally car made by ProDrive,
Hmm.
which they certainly have used in other presentations. For them to bring over something like that was
Hmm.
made by Vermont Sports Car that and showcase it and have it literally center stage as they're basically making this announcement of his directions that he wants to go. I think that's really, really huge because of the level
Hmm.
of performance that is baked into the Huckster. And the other thought I have is the reason that they picked that one over, say, Project Midnight or whatnot, is
Hmm.
because the Huckster is based on the GL. There's a lot
Hmm.
of heritage in that design and that shape that the Huckster tapped into. So it kind of matches this message that they have about, the Subaru heritage, where Subaru comes from, what their roots are in that design, but then also like elevating the level of performance. So I kind of
Hmm.
wonder if just the fact that they're showcasing that maybe is giving us a hint of the direction that they're going more maybe than anything else on that stage.
I think it's also recognition of the enthusiast customer because to me it feels like, hey, Subaru fans, we know what you're doing. You're buying older models. You might not be the one stepping into the showroom for the 2025, 26
Mm,
model and being able to afford a brand new, but you're still buying a late 90s or mid 2000s model and spending big money to modify it. And I've always thought that that connection needed to be more solidified with
mm,
Subaru corporate because
yeah.
if you have a really clean GD STI that's still on the road, that's a great representation for the brand. So whether or
Yeah.
not they're making money directly, it's fueling the aftermarket, that's for sure, because they're buying performance parts. But what it really shows is, I mean, it's that Subaru stay on the road for 20, 30 years. And I think that's a marketing point that they use quite often. I mean, if you see a Forester commercial, it'll say, 98% of Foresters are still on the road. So
Yeah.
they really take pride in these cars being driven for decades. And I think the enthusiasts are the ones really contributing to that. I mean, there's a reason
Well,
that people have like low mileage first gen Foresters because they covet them.
and oh, for sure. And it's the idea that this is a car that you're going to buy and own and drive and keep running and love. This is not just something for the next year or two. This is like a long-term relationship. And I think like the whole lead up of the presentation, he
Hmm.
was acknowledging that like that's the reason that people like Subaru as much as they do is because these cars are like that's the kind of driver relationship that you have with your cars, that this is something that it's not just, a new novelty or something that is fun for a little while. This is something that like it's good enough to drive that you're gonna be driving this thing for a handful of years at least.
Right. And if
And
that
they
is
acknowledge that.
his, exactly, if that's his mentality or way of thinking, then I'm hoping he's thinking of the STI concept B as,
Yeah.
okay, we'll put into production, we'll introduce it because we know that for the next 30 years, people will love this car, no matter
Yeah.
how old it gets and how many miles are on it.
And when you're talking about STI, I mean that is the hallmark of an STI. I mean there are very, very few STIs that do not stay on the road in some way, shape, or form. Like people keep their STIs running, they keep them going, they hold on to them for a long time. I mean, there's that for the STI. I mean, that's like the pinnacle of the connection with the brand of Subaru for many, many
Hmm.
people.
Well, and
Yeah,
that's why it was a shame why he got taken away. And I think that was a
yeah,
huge blow to the community and a big surprise to everyone that you would take away that namesake unless you were bringing it back with, as I mentioned, like the swan song or the best version of it. I could see a rationale for pulling the STI badge out, taking some time off, and then introducing something really special. And if the other side of it was you take the badge out and you just throw it in the trash and forget about it. I mean, you've built
Yeah.
that lineage up for so long. What a shame. And I think they
Yeah.
did the latter, not the former, as
Well,
of, 14 hours ago.
and the feeling that I'm getting is this, the new CEO, Osakai, he really appreciates and understands the significance of
Mhm.
that STI badge. And that's like a big part of this presentation is that he's showing that he understands that. And I think this gives us as enthusiasts a lot to be optimistic about for a change versus where it feels like everything's being taken away.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
something we talked about in a past video that I brought up is I just didn't want STI to come back as a trim package. I've seen Nissan do it with Nismo, and it started out with good intentions where you'd have the Nismo version of whatever, the Ultima, let's say, and it looks cool, and maybe it had a couple extra suspension upgrades or something, but eventually it got so diluted that they just threw the Nismo name at everything, and
Right.
it made it
It lost its
pretty
meaning.
average. And so I didn't
Yeah.
want that to happen in the STI, and it clearly didn't, because they threw in so many things, and maybe this is a good way to pivot to the Concept B.
Yeah.
There's so many things that are exciting about that car. It could have just been an Impreza with some badges, which some people say it is, and it's driving me crazy that those are, in the comments right now
Yeah.
that they're going, it's a cross truck with a wing. You're nuts. That is no.
Yes. Okay. So let's nerd out on these concepts because there's some really interesting details here. The first and foremost is that the Performance B is significantly more finished, appears finished.
Mhm.
It looks like it's way closer to production ready versus the Concept E. I mean
Mhm.
that the E one, there was no interior. Um, yeah, I, I have some interesting theories about that, but it seems like that was much more of a design concept. They're kind of giving us a glimpse of what the design language might be
Mhm.
in the future, but it's still far enough away that that's not a finished car. That is not production ready. That's just kind of like a design concept. Whereas the Performance B, I mean, it looks like that's a fully functional car. If you told me that that drove on and off the showroom
Mhm.
floor, I would believe it. Now, I don't know what's under the hood,
Right.
and it concerns me that no specs were given in either of these. But like, what are you most excited about with the direction of that Performance B concept?
Well, first I'll say I think they played it perfectly by having the B and the E in the stages that they were at. So
Okay.
I couldn't have asked for anything more with the B concept with how complete it felt, right? It could have had tinted windows with no interior, so you can't look in. It could have had some
Yeah.
really ridiculous parts strapped to it that are never going to make it to production. Feasibly outside of that big wing, pretty much everything on that car I could see in production. Um,
Yeah.
with the E concept, yes, it's just kind of like a paintbrush stroke. It just
Yeah.
sort of shows you the shape. It shows you the concept. There's some 3D renderings of it going extremely fast through the mountains. It gets you excited, and we know we're going to put that in the back of our minds, and we'll revisit that 4 years from now when it's an actual car that does drive onto the show floor.
Yeah.
So I think what really gets me excited, I'm going to pull up photos on our social media here so we can talk about some styling
Hmm.
cues as we get into it. I mean, what really excites me is I really felt like they delivered the thing that enthusiasts were asking for. Because I think we
Yes.
as enthusiasts feel a little bit entitled. We sit here, if we followed Subaru for the last 15 years, you can talk to any one of those diehard enthusiasts and say, make me a list of your perfect car. And they're gonna check a bunch of boxes. And once you check 15 boxes, that's a high expectation for that car to come out. And
Yeah.
let's go through some of those boxes. What did I want if they were going to bring an STI back? Hatchback. It had to be a hatchback, or maybe
Okay.
a sedan and a hatchback version. Sure, it had to have aggressive styling. It had to have the manual. To me, it had to have one last combustion engine. And as diehard of an EJ guy as I am, I was hoping it would have an FA, and I'm still hopeful that it does. The FA 24.
I think
Um,
it has to. I think it has to.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then big brakes, right? So you want performance brakes, you want just the standard stuff you would expect with an STI taken to the next level. And so you make that long list, and I would say Subaru hit, I mean, we don't have all the details, but they hit 98% of that stuff,
Yeah.
you know?
It seems like, I mean, we've made a couple videos talking about how with them, especially with them coming out with the TR and the TS versions of the VB,
Hmm.
why aren't, like in the TS, why did they not put the STI transmission in there? It has a 6-speed. It just doesn't have the STI 6-speed with the DCCD. You
Right.
have the transmission. You've done all the R&D. It's a known quantity drivetrain. Why don't you just put it in there if you're getting so close to it?
Hmm.
And it seems like they're this performance B concept, it's like they understand that rationale.
Yeah.
That's basically what they're showing us is like, okay, well this is the SI drivetrain. You see the little DCCD selector,
Right.
you see the SI drive. I mean, it's like maybe they're seeing that or they're thinking along similar lines as far as what they could do if they're going to make another combustion STI before this electric one comes out. What do you think the significance is? I was really surprised that it was not on a VB chassis. I was surprised that it's basically
Mm.
on an Impreza chassis
Right.
that they then modified. And that is the biggest thing that's thrown me to this point is why that? And
So
I don't know
yeah,
why.
I've had a couple of thoughts on this as well. Early on, I assumed he would either be on Lavorg chassis, which I
Yeah.
suppose is VAVB, or Crosstrek Impreza chassis. And I mean, because we know that that's what they're going to draw from for a hatchback. They're not going to redesign the wheel. It would just cost way too much to develop another chassis for this specifically.
Right.
So I really didn't know until they debuted it, and then instantly, just seeing the size of it and the rear window section, you could tell it's a Crosstrek Impreza chassis. So
Yeah.
I I don't really have feelings one way or the other. If they would have introduced it as a Lavorg, great. That's what I've always wanted. I've seen being in Japan, Lavorg STIs running all over the place, and I always say, man, if only we got this in the U.S. market and it had a 6-speed, that would be the car that I would be driving right now. Um,
Yeah.
what I've heard since is and you might be able to talk about this a little bit more with the WRC. From what I understand, Subaru wants to get back into WRC. They need a homologated chassis, and in order to meet the specifications for the race cars, it has to be certain size and dimensions. And the Crosstrek and Impreza chassis fits into that category where the VB does not. I don't know if that's rumor,
I
hearsay, or complete BS.
I I don't think that's correct. I
Okay,
think it's still too big because we're actually looking this up. The Impreza, the Crosstrek, and the WRX are within 1/10 of an inch of the same wheelbase.
really? Oh,
So
wheelbase, sure. What about overall
it would
length?
have to it would have to be smaller than what it is.
Mhm.
And like if you look at like you think about the Yaris as an example,
Yeah,
that is a significantly smaller car. And when they left the WRC in 2008, when they went to the GR chassis, part of it was because even the GR was too big and too heavy. It's like
mm,
that you had the Impreza and then the GR got bigger, and then that's what made them not competitive anymore because now the car was too big, too heavy. Heck, even if you look back at like some of the rallycross from around that same time, um, you know, those cars were too heavy to compete with some of the other cars that were coming over from Europe, the rallycross
right,
cars.
right.
It had to be a smaller chassis. I think what if they were really going to get going to be able to be more competitive or have a competitive chassis for the WRC, it would have to be significantly smaller. Probably
Mhm.
something maybe even smaller um, than the old GD was.
Mhm.
Maybe in a two-door, like a two-door version of it, like just like
Right.
much smaller. I think
And
that's
that,
my
as
take on that.
enthusiasts, will probably be asking for too much because Subaru's so good at drawing from their parts bin, right? Like they reinvent the wheel very infrequently, and then when they do
Yeah,
a new model, they'll just grab this, and this, and especially when it comes to chassis, which makes Subaru such a great manufacturer because of the
yeah,
interchangeability. They refuse to
100%.
change the chassis. And
Yeah,
so it's along these lines, I saw a comment that said, um, hopefully they put this into production. But what I really want to see is a Crosstrek with a 6-speed manual, turbocharged, lifted, and I'm like, but that is what the STI is. Just lift it up instead of lower it when
yeah,
you get it. I mean, you are
yeah.
getting a performance Crosstrek in a sense, but I also push extremely hard at people that say it's a Crosstrek with a wing. No, it is a performance STI. It's on an Impreza Crosstrek chassis, which if you're old enough like we are, you remember they were always based off the Impreza chassis. It wasn't until 2015 that they made a proprietary WRX and STI. But
Yeah.
I honestly think the formula of you introduce the base model Impreza, then maybe you have like the 2.5 RS, the slightly better version, and then you have the WRX, and then you have the STI. It's just such a great marketing and sales strategy, along with just being a good production and manufacturing strategy.
Well, and so here's what's really interesting to me about this is this there's a lot of people that pointed out the similarities between the GR Corolla and this.
Hmm.
One of the biggest similarities to me is that it's very clear that they bolted the wide body kit onto this car that they were building up. That's basically what the GR Corolla looks like. You have the
Hmm.
Corolla and then you have the GR Corolla. Like there's a very striking visual difference between those two. Now, and like to your point, in 15, when they kind of moved the WRX and the STI onto their own platform, the design language was different. And so now you had the WRX and the STI that were kind of doing their own thing. And the WRX and the STI were always like more similar to one another and significantly different from the Impreza. This is like I said, it's like here's the Impreza, and you have all of these bodies that are coming down the production line. This one
Hmm.
becomes an Impreza, maybe this one
Yep.
becomes an STI. And I wonder if that's part of the idea here is that now the STI is going to be, you know, a big change, a big
Hmm.
step up in performance compared to what the Impreza is, but it's kind of reconnecting to those roots of the Impreza. And to me, I
Yep.
think that's maybe a positive. And I like the design language. The strange thing to me is that it looks so similar to the GR hatchback STI,
Hmm.
and that was the least popular. Like the GR STI really didn't get its footing until they came out with the sedan. And
Hmm.
I don't know why that is. It's good to see that a lot of people are getting excited about this concept. But
Hmm.
it is the similarities between the GR STI hatchback and this concept are striking to me, and
Yep.
especially knowing that how kind of poorly received the GR hatchback was.
There might be an argument that I mean, it didn't. It was a little bit jarring for Subaru enthusiasts to get a hatchback, a performance GR STI like that, and so maybe
Yeah,
they weren't really ready for it. And now that it's been a decade since, it's kind of simmered on our minds as well. Yeah, the GR hatch is one of the coolest Subarus ever made, as far as an enthusiast, says.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
maybe there's a chunk of that where they're saying, okay, this is a beloved chassis now. Let's try and bring it back in a new age Crosstrek version.
yeah.
And then also they're probably looking at Toyota and saying, man, look at the sales of the GR Corolla and trying to emulate that to some degree. So to me, this is, yes, it's reminiscent of a GR, but I think it mirrors or shadows the Corolla a little bit more. As
Yeah.
far as like the stubbiness of the chassis and the more abrupt hatch, degree in the back.
Yeah. One of the definitions to me that I think of with why the STI is the STI and why it's so cool and so popular
Hmm.
is because this is a car that is fun to drive, which they definitely hit on, very
Hmm.
capable, it's fast, but it's something where like many people when they buy an STI, that is their daily driven car. This is not something like a Corvette or a 911 or something where you're
Right.
going to buy it. This is your Sunday driver. This is something that's
Hmm.
going to spend most of its days in a garage. It's only going to come out on special occasions when the weather's nice.
Right.
STIs, like you can drive this thing every day. It's snowing. Perfect.
Hmm.
It's STI weather. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to go to work. I'm going to take the long way home. I'm going to just enjoy driving on the snowy roads and stuff like that. Having a wagon, having a hatchback, it makes it like you can do almost anything with this car.
Yes.
I'm gonna take friends up skiing. We're gonna take the STI. I'm gonna
Hmm.
go camping. Let's take the STI. Like there's almost nothing once you have it as a hatchback that you can't do with the
Exactly.
STI, and that's what makes it so cool. It's such a capable car. It can go out there and drive and like fight and try and keep up with Corvettes and 911s,
Hmm.
but you're also driving it to work every day in the snow, and you can still do all of that. That's why I mean the STI is like the Swiss Army knife of sports cars, and I think that
Right.
this what I like is that this connects to that.
Right. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that's why there's been such a desire over the last decade to get a hatch again, because I'll give you a good personal example. I've got a buddy that started an automotive shop not too long ago, and he's been hitting me up for some Subaru advice because he used to be a Subaru guy back in the day, got into some other stuff, into drift culture and whatever. But now he's thinking Subarus again because he does parts runs throughout the day, and he
Oh
wants
yeah.
something that he could take to the other shop to pick up parts, have fun on the commute there and back, and then have the space. And you know what he's talking about? A GR hatch. And
Right.
so, you got to go back. And the unfortunate part is they're rusty. They have high miles. A lot of them need rebuilds. And so maybe that same person considering buying an old hatch might just say, "Oh, I'll buy something new with a warranty that I can have for the next 10 years and also do parts runs, but then go to the track and have my family and go skiing." And
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. I think it's a win-win-win. But at the end of the day, man, if this comes out and it's all talk and people don't put their money where their mouth is, uh, I don't think we're getting another chance after this one.
Right, man. And so that is the risk. That is the danger. And then what's it going to cost? And then
Hmm.
what concerns me the most is that there was no specs given for either one of these.
Right.
And so we don't know what it's going to cost, but we also don't. They're not tipping their hand as far as what they're even thinking about in terms of performance for these cars.
Well, right. Let's talk about the engine. What do you think? I mean, to me, and maybe I honestly haven't given it the deepest thought. Some people in comments again will rattle off a lot of engine options. To me, if it's not the FA24, I just don't know what they pick. It's obviously not going to be an EJ. It seems like they phased that out for,
Yeah.
at the very least, emission standards. But at the most, it's just an old engine. It's aged
Yeah.
out. So what else would they put in there?
It's got to be the FA24. It has to
Right.
be because that's the new technology. And what we're seeing, there's so many people that went from Subaru into the Euro market,
Hmm.
like Volkswagen, BMW, like are the most common transitions. And in part, what the lure of that Euro market or Euro car is, like a Golf R, M3, 335, what have you, was the fact
Hmm.
that you can buy the car and with basically minimal bolt-ons and a reflash, you can gain almost 100 horsepower. We've never had a Subaru that has anywhere near that kind of headroom until the FA24. I mean, even the EJ
Hmm.
was like, to gain 100 horsepower in an EJ engine, even an STI,
Oh,
you're talking about forged pistons, built engine,
right.
big turbo swap. It's thousands of dollars to get that extra 100 horsepower. Then it's like, now you decide like is it 1, 2, or 300 horsepower that you want to gain over stock, and then that just
Hmm.
determines the build. But there's a ton of expense and parts to get you to that point.
Hmm.
This FA24 engine, like, if you switch to E85 and minimal bolt-ons, like the gains
There.
are significant. And that's why
Hmm.
I think it has to be that engine. And it also tells us, I think, that Subaru built a lot more capability into that engine than we're seeing, maybe because there was supposed to be an STI that they pulled the plug on. So, I mean, I would say, I would guess that they could take that engine and release it maybe even as high as 400 horsepower
Hmm.
to the public, as a brand new car with a warranty here, and it should still be reliable.
Yeah,
There might have to be a little bit more tweaks, than there was between the EJ27 and EJ 25 or 255 back in the
hmm
day, but I
hmm
think they could do it.
right. And I agree with you that in general, it's going to have more horsepower. I don't necessarily think they're going to hit the 400 mark. It seems like Subaru's always been very conservative when it comes
Yeah,
to raising power, and especially, what was it? Was it the Type RA where they boasted that it's 3 more horsepower than it used to be
yeah,
before, and everyone's
yeah.
like, just don't even talk about it. It's the same horsepower, 305. It's
Well,
always 305, 305, 305.
I
And
mean, heck, the
now,
S209, it was like
yeah,
40. Like that was like with this
yeah,
completely hand-built
right.
engine, the different turbo, all these things. It was 40 more horsepower, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think
I
they've
mean, maybe that's where we
leaned in
get.
well, I think that's what we used to get. So
Yeah,
they had to lean into, okay, it's a, let's call it 3 to 40 horsepower increase, because that's really all that engine can handle reliably to still keep that warranty. I mean, do you want to pump it up 100 horsepower? Sure, but the way that people drive these, you're going to have a lot more warranty claims and rebuilds on your hands. Now I think we've gotten to a point where they're confident that it can have a 100 horsepower increase. I still think they'll put it in, like, when I think STI, to me, it's synonymous with 305 horsepower. I think if they gave it 350, 370, I'd be happy with that, knowing that
yeah,
I can get it home, I can modify it, and it's going to be in the 400s easy. And that makes everybody happy. We got our power bump. Subaru still keeps their reliability and keeps the warranty claims down. The aftermarket goes on and can modify these engines, and then that 400 horsepower will be sort of a badge of honor. Like, yep, I've got my Concept B, 401 horsepower. There
Yeah.
it is.
So there's an elephant in the performance aftermarket that I think is really relevant here, and I think Subaru's aware of it. I just don't know to what degree. But which is, and the importance in this regard is there's a big reason why they need to swing for the fences as far as what kind of power this car is going to make compared to the past. And the difference is that it is now not as, in some ways it's easier than it's ever been to take a car and increase the power output significantly, but it's also more limiting and more difficult than it's ever been now to increase the power output of a car. I think one of the reasons that the STI was able to sit at 305 horsepower for so long in the past was because there was STI owners that was fine. They just wanted the factory car, 305 horsepower, it was enough. And then there was, like, say 10 to 20% of those people that, like, no, I want 500 horsepower. There's a path to it, but it's completely aftermarket. It's not something that Subaru has to then support. And then that's where a lot of the legend of the STIs and WRXs and whatever came from, is because you can build them to whatever power level you want. For the most part, there's ways to do it reliably, and then that's where these cars can go out there and compete and be as fast on the track as, say your Porsches, like Caymans, 911s, Corvettes, until you get to the really pointy end of these track days or competition classes.
Yeah.
It's harder to do that now than it's ever been before. So to keep the STI relevant, it's important for Subaru to raise that level so that people that are looking at the car that's rolling off the showroom floor is going to be a lot closer to these other cars that they want to compete with, because it's going to be harder for many, many people. I'm thinking, like, as in the California market, for instance, and in Colorado, in here, we're kind of in a similar boat to California, where, like, there's much less you can do in terms of modification and still keep the car a daily driven car to increase the power output. And I think Subaru has to be aware of that with, what they're gonna, if they're gonna bring the STI back as a combustion engine car, with what it can do. That's why the specs are so important.
I agree with you on there, and I think that the power output is going to have to justify the cost of the car, which we don't have any sort of pricing specs on it. But the first comment, or the most frequent comment I see, is, okay, this is great, I like what they did with it, but it's going to be way too expensive for me. And people are saying 60, 70,000 plus. I'm remaining optimistic. I'm hoping it's in the mid to high 40s. I've heard some rumor that that's where it's going to be in Japan, but you start getting it over here and tariffs and shipping and all that, it'll be in the low to mid 50s. It seems crazy to say that that's reasonable. If we get all the stuff they're sort of promising us in this package, I would say low to mid 50s isn't unreasonable. 60, 70, yeah, that's getting to ridiculous territory where now, people are considering other cars. But with what you said, with how this is the Swiss Army knife of cars, look, you spend, I don't know, what are Corvettes? I mean, the C8s are probably six figures, right? So maybe, but you're also driving it in Minnesota probably 4 to 5 months out of the year, if you're lucky.
If that.
This STI is 12 months, and you get to have fun in it every single season. If you could have fun in the snow, you could have your track days in the nice weather. You can go watch the leaves change in the fall. Like, that is an all year thing. And if it costs me 50 grand, at least I can justify that I'm using it all the time and it's not parked in the garage for half the season.
Yeah. And then the capability and the all-wheel drive drivetrain that they're leaning into, like staying with the STI drivetrain. I have mixed feelings about that. I think it's a really positive thing that it has that. But to me, it's like that is like 20, almost 25 years old at this, 21 years old. We need to see what the next version of that is. But I think it's entirely possible that they've put all of their development dollars in the direction of this electric chassis, and that they have not developed a new generation of STI. And honestly, if we just get the old STI drivetrain back, okay, as long as the power is there and it's the tried and true STI drivetrain, okay. That,
to me, it's a case of,
worth
if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yep.
because if there's anything that's remained consistent throughout the years, it's the greatness of the STI 6-speed. I mean, there's so many
Yep.
drag cars, track cars shops that we've worked with where I've talked to them, and they have a fully built engine that they rebuild every season, and they have the same factory 6-speed that they've had in there for the last 6 seasons, and it's still
Yeah.
shifting through all gears, and it's taking the power. And that to me has proven it. I mean, I swapped a 6-speed into my Forester, and I drive it pretty hard, and it's rear wheel drive, so I'll do donuts and burnouts and things like that. And
Yeah.
stuff is broken in that car, and the transmission hasn't missed a beat.
Yeah. Whereas, like, you look at some of these more trick transmissions that were in like the Focus RS or the GR Corolla, they have a lot more issues with overheating. It
Right.
gets like you can actually, the drivetrain can put you into a limp mode on track. Like, it's just
Right.
like the consistency is not there, and the consistency of the STI drivetrain. I mean, it is the most bulletproof part of the car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool. I mean, at the end of the day, as an enthusiast, I'll speak for myself. I'm kind of stuck in the past. I like to see the old school stuff. I mean, I understand there's been serious upgrades in automatic transmissions and paddle shift, and yes, they are faster and whatever, but give me the same transmission I was shifting 20 years ago. That makes me feel nice as an enthusiast. That
It's a
maybe
known
not.
quantity.
Right, exactly. And
Yeah.
I've always had a bit of an issue with the 0 to 60 and people saying, okay, paddle shift is quicker. I mean, we're talking about 0.1, 0.3. Like, as a daily driven car, it's not a 6-second car. I could care less if it's slightly faster, slightly slow. It's about the feel. And you give
Sure.
me
Sure.
the feel of 20 years ago, and maybe you'll get my 50 grand.
Well, and I think they're hearing that, and that's what we're seeing in this concept. And the fact that this concept has full interior, this drivetrain, the
Hmm.
DCCD selector, I mean, they're paying attention. I'm thinking there might even be one or two people from Subaru that'll sit down and watch this. So
Hmm.
I hope you're taking notes, Subaru.
Yeah.
Um, we've talked a ton about the performance. We haven't even mentioned the Performance E.
Okay.
Now, one, like I put out a short yesterday, just like,
Hmm.
what do you guys think? And getting like hundreds of comments and looking through them. And I think that there's a significant amount of people that are interested in the Performance B and that
Hmm.
want the combustion engine STI. But there are some people they're really curious about the Performance E,
Yep.
the electric chassis. There's an interesting thing that I noticed, and I like some of the direction of what they're going with that. But all right, so Art, I got a trivia question for you.
Okay.
How many Subarus can you think of that have center lock wheels?
I mean, are we saying production cars? Because 0, right?
Right, right.
Okay.
But the Performance E has center lock wheels, which is
Yeah, but
interesting.
it's so far out for a concept. I could see that happening. I
I,
mean, but what
here's
do you
here's
got?
where I'm going
You're
with
setting
this.
me up for something.
Yes, yes. Okay. We have seen 3 electric concepts that are just kind of proof of concepts. We have the
Hmm.
STI ERA, which is the one
Hmm.
that was the first one that came out, I think in 22 or
Hmm.
23, which is the one that looked like a BRZ, but they said it's fully electric, and
Right.
they said
Right.
it was going to be 1,000 horsepower, center lock wheels.
Mm.
2024, we had the Subaru Performance Mobility concept. So this was the electric car. There was a coupe. It was silver.
Hmm.
Um, and it had an interior that actually was like kind of in the direction of like what the 22 and up WRX was.
Hmm.
Also had center lock wheels. And now
Hmm.
this concept, the Performance E, also has center lock wheels.
Hmm.
What I'm wondering is if like it, and it's very clear, like whereas the Performance B, like, okay, this like it looks like a car, you can see a radiator behind the grill.
Yeah. Right.
Like this might be something, my guess is that it's something that rolled off the assembly line. They modified it to look the way that they want it to look. I think it probably runs and drives. I don't know
Sure.
if it's got an actual STI engine in it, or
Right.
even an STI 6-speed, like that DCCD controller. I mean, that could literally just
Yeah, that's
be
fair.
a piece. But the Performance E is definitely like that thing might be mostly clay.
Yeah.
But what I'm wondering is it possible that this is the Subaru skateboard that they're developing, and then they're putting these different bodies
Mm.
on it to
Hmm.
kind of get a sense of what design language do people like?
Right.
And I say that just because of the center lock wheels, and it seems interesting that all of the electric concepts have had that.
Hmm.
And I think the only other Subaru that has center lock wheels is probably the GT300 BRZ.
Right. Right. Yeah. And so, I mean, my first thought is they're kind of thinking backwards. They're thinking forward but backwards in a way of they're thinking of the raciest, the fastest model that they're going to create. I mean, there is some likelihood that they could offer a full EV that's extremely fast on the expensive side, and it is center lock, and it competes with some of the kind of luxury race cars out there. I could see that being a car that, you were saying the STI is the Monday through Sunday car. I could
Right.
see the EV STI being the weekend only track car that you trailer over to the track.
Maybe.
Yeah, and you have maybe even like your little team that has a trailer with the center lock wheels behind it and all of that. I mean, there could be a world where that's true, and I think that would be pretty far removed from what the STI is now. But just going to a full EV drivetrain is already going to remove it so far that the enthusiast is going to have to get it out of their mind that this is even it has anything to do with the STIs of the past. It's going to have a
Yeah.
badge that says STI, but everything else will be different, and we need to be okay with that. And that might include center
Yeah.
lock wheels.
Well, and that's one of the things that I think is dawned on me in seeing what the comments are between these two concepts is that I think that there's a lot of the old school people that are gravitating very strongly towards the Performance B. It might be a completely different demographic that are looking at the Performance C and going like, I like this. I like what this looks like. I like the potential here. I think their challenge is even if it is two different demographics, and what I think kind of what they were saying with the presentation is that they're going to make it feel like an STI or a Subaru as much as they can. They want to bring as much of that Subaru DNA to this electric STI as they can, and they certainly can do it. And to a large extent, they've shown that they can do that with the Solterra, for instance. And so like I think that there's a positive there. The other thing that strikes me about the Performance E concept that was really interesting is how much like it has a very long hood, a very long nose. There's an extraction hood on it. It seems like there's a lot of cooling, especially up front in the design. And with the EVs, like you can very easily put a big motor in there in a battery, and you can get like really fast acceleration. That's easy. Being able to do that repeatedly, that's where it becomes challenging. And cooling is a big part of that. And it seems like in all of these EV concepts, the ERA and sport mobility concept, they've all had decent radiators up front and possible extraction hood, a lot of cooling kind of baked into the design.
Right.
So I think that STI is thinking along those lines, and the Performance E is also more aerodynamic than the Performance B, and so I think they're thinking about efficiency, and so I think that there's definitely some positives there, but I think it's so. I mean, it's so much just like a design concept. Like there's not a whole lot that we can infer from it, especially with them not giving us any specs.
Right. And I mean, with all the things you said, with the added cooling and just kind of the design theme of this car, I think it's just they're pushing it towards track and performance driving, and I mean that fits in with their performance mindset that they're setting forward. I think what we're going to see is a deviation from the old rally routes. Like when I look at that EV concept, I just do not see that flying through the dirt. And I know, I guess in the promo video, it was on a kind of a canyon road and it was going really fast. So I could see them doing like a Pikes Peak type challenge with that car. But do I see that thing sliding sideways in the WRC? No chance. Or, whatever equivalent race series to that.
I think, and that's okay. I mean, because they had the GT300 BRZ in that promo, and like if they're going to take more of like a road racing side of this, I'm okay with that. And it could very well be that the Performance B, that's something that they're going to keep going, because then that's something they can keep competing in with here at ARA, maybe over there in the WRC. Maybe there's some way to modify it to get it to fit into one of the WRC classes. I mean, maybe this is the path that gives them a platform that can do both things. The significance about the skateboard, though, the last point that I want to make about this is why I think it's so important what they do with it is all of the EVs right now are co-developed with Toyota, and it's basically a Subaru Toyota skateboard that they're putting the different bodies on. The STI is the first one that they're designing fully in-house, at least that's what they've said. That means that this is going to be Subaru's skateboard. What I kind of suspect is that this is going to be the platform that they're going to use maybe starting in 2030 or just a little bit
Hmm.
thereafter, where we get like the complete second generation of the Solterra that is probably going to be on the Subaru skateboard. And all of these
Right.
other cars that are coming out with, it's going to be on the Subaru skateboard. So this is
Hmm.
where like the specs of what this STI is, which is going to be the pinnacle, are going to be so important because there's probably going to be a distilled version of that that's going to then fall into these other Subaru EVs once they can actually come out with their own designs. And so I
Yeah,
think there's something there that is worth watching.
and it would be true to form with Subaru from the past, like we talked about with Impreza chassis. It kind of starts with
Yeah,
one developed chassis, and then they just they play off that for the next 5-7 years, and maybe they
yeah,
redevelop it or they tweak it, and it goes into it. And again, it's one of the things that makes Subaru so great is because it lends
yeah.
to the interchangeability. Once they go to this new skateboard style, then for the next 20 years, that's where your interchangeability is going to be, and that allows them to feed the market with the models they want. The off-road stuff, the on-road stuff, the performance, everything, commuter, SUV.
Yeah,
So Subaru, they know what they're doing. They've been around long enough, and
I
for as
think
much
so.
criticism as they get, I think they're going to have a long run in this still, because I'm still adamant that amongst all the manufacturers out there, they're near the top of making good decisions and catering towards the average person where the money's at and the enthusiast simultaneously. And at the end of the
They,
day,
yeah,
we can't complain about anything as enthusiasts. We've gotten so many great models. Uh, you know, whatever your poison is, you can pick it.
yeah, yeah. I mean the fact that Subaru keeps growing and they're one of the smaller car manufacturers out there, and they keep
Hmm.
like they find a way to make it work, and they're so much bigger now than they were before. And then I think they're looking at this as a transitional period. I mean, Osaki specifically says that we're in a transitional period, and I think that they're
Hmm.
finding a through line to get them to that next point.
Hmm.
Um, the last question I have for you to that end is,
Hmm.
because you've been in Japan recently,
Hmm.
what are how present are EVs in Japan that you have seen?
I would say they're pretty rare, actually. Day to day,
Okay,
I didn't see too many on the road, and these days when I go back, we rent a car. It kind of gives us more access to some of the smaller areas, so you're not just stuck
yeah,
in Tokyo and Kyoto and Osaka. And so I do keep an eye out for that stuff. And I would say majority you're seeing combustion or hybrid. A lot of Toyotas on the road, no surprise
yeah,
there. So a lot of hybrid stuff. As far as Subarus, overwhelming BRZ and Lavorgs just
okay,
everywhere. It's pretty rare to see like a VA STI or even VBs. I don't think I've
mm,
ever seen a modified VB. You see some stock ones rolling around here and there,
okay,
but for the most part, I mean, the Japanese culture is interesting when it comes to cars. The whole area of where they travel is relatively small. I mean, if they're
yeah,
commuting, we're talking about like a 12-mile range probably for the average person. So they're either driving their car in or they're taking public transport. They're
okay,
not as much worried, at least in my mind, about efficiency or,
mm,
just being able to have a fully electric car as a necessity versus something that's just kind of a luxury thing. So a lot of what I see is smaller, efficient cars, hybrid, and wagons. That's the big thing. I mean, here in the US,
okay,
anytime I talk to someone there and they go, well, what do you have for cars? And I go, well, I've got my Forester, I've got a Tacoma, I've got a Cressida, I've got a Previa, I've got this. And they go, you have 7 cars? And I go, well, yeah, I mean, they're all pretty cheap. Like one of them was $1,000
right,
bucks and this one was $2,000. And they go, yeah, we can only have one. So it has to be
right,
all in one.
right,
And maybe once I started thinking maybe they don't believe in EV quite yet, as far as if they want to go travel a longer distance, like they don't have another option,
yeah,
then they have to have something that's gasoline, because just to be able to top it off.
yeah. See what got me thinking about this? I was talking to Damian Bradley. That's a podcast that's going to come out shortly. He's obviously
Hmm.
in the UK. What Subaru in the UK has said is that as of 2028, they're only going to have electric vehicles.
Hmm.
And I know that Europe, they're still holding to the EV mandates. And so then that's the other thing to think about is like, okay, well, what market is this EV for?
Hmm.
And I mean, so obviously the European market is probably one of the prime markets plus then the
Right.
US market. But then a lot of that is going to be determined by how these current 3 EV models are received in those markets.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's certainly a plus that like in the UK and in Europe, if there's going to be an electric STI, that there would be a performance option so that Subaru can keep that kind of performance heritage tied to an electric chassis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's just like, will that then translate to the U.S. market? And what I'm wondering is if they're getting a sense with the U.S. market, in which we are their biggest market by a long, long way.
Mm-hmm.
And then Australia too. Like, I wonder what I'm guessing that in Australia that maybe there's not as much adoption for the EV chassis either.
Right.
That they're wondering like some of these bigger markets, they really have to have that combustion option for people. And
Mm-hmm.
so maybe that's
Mm-hmm.
part of the motivation for the performance to be as well.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it takes time for people to adapt. I'll admit it'll take time for me to adapt out of my old ways. I'm stuck in it as a lot of people are. But I've also been optimistic that as I age and as these offerings come out, I think there will be a day where I go into my garage and there's at least one EV option there. And maybe the combustion one is the weekend car, kind of how people have their old MG midgets in the garage right now that they
Yep.
fire up, clean the
Yep.
carbs, fire up on Saturday morning and go to the classic car show. It's going to be the same with Subarus eventually. I mean, if I can get
Yeah.
in an EV truck that's, it can charge for 500 miles and no problem, and that's probably the thing I'll take to work every day, and then I'll go hop in my fun combustion car, when I'm 50 or 60 years old.
I will tell you from personal experience, once you start commuting in an EV, it's like it's hard to go back to a non-EV for commuting.
I always hear that. It's kind of like I used to sleep on a really crappy mattress in college, and I thought it was fine until I got a good
Yeah.
mattress, and then I'm like, I'm never going back to that. I actually
Yep.
sleep better now. It's the same thing. So I'm afraid to get in a nice EV because once I get back in my Forester, it's just going to be like, what am I doing here?
There's some key differences, but I mean, I think these are the things that now that Subaru's got all these different options coming out, I think this is going to be the thing that people are going to be exploring more.
Mm-hmm.
And like long term, I mean, that's going to be the interesting thing because, just to your point, once you experience the EV, if there are things there that you're just like, wow, I didn't realize that I like this. I didn't realize that I wanted this. And then you go back, like that might be something that actually helps facilitate people then really
Mm-hmm.
being interested in, okay, well, let's take this and like push the performance aspect of it,
Mm-hmm.
with whatever an STI is. And then like to a certain extent, I can see like maybe not from a tracking standpoint and maybe not from a competition standpoint, but from like a
Mm-hmm.
daily driving standpoint, an STI, this fun, fast car that handles well that you can drive every day. There's a lot that the EV checks a lot of those boxes
Right.
with a
Right.
much higher
Agreed.
potential than what a combustion engine STI maybe could or would.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll just have to
I
see.
agree. I mean, in any case, it's fun to speculate, and 10 years from today, we'll be here before we know it. So,
Yes, yes. Well, and Art, I've taken up a lot of your time. I just realized how long it's been, so I think we should wrap it up here. But
Mhm.
I think overall, the biggest thing that I came away with now after thinking about this for a day is just like how I think there's a lot here to be optimistic about just the way that Osakai presented this, the things that he's choosing to focus and emphasize with Subaru, what performance and adventure mean to the Subaru brand and to him. I think I think this tells me that we're moving in a good direction from an
Mhm.
enthusiast's point of view. I'm optimistic. I think there's a chance that a lot of these, especially the SI concepts, it's just almost more of a litmus test than a like, hey, you're going to see this on showrooms in a couple of months.
Mhm.
But I think that they're learning a lot from that litmus test, and I just like the direction.
Yeah, my best guess is that they are going to have whatever research department at Subaru combing through comments and just the general sentiment of the people. And from what I've seen, we talked about this as the Overtake crew. We've been talking about it nonstop in the last day, but I think back to when they released the VB. That was the last time it sort of felt like this, where the whole community was buzzing.
Yeah.
And they released it. The promotional video that I saw was they chose the orange one, which is arguably
Yep.
amongst the enthusiasts like the worst looking one. And at that point, we haven't really gotten used to the mismatched flares, and there was the expectation of the STI. So when they dropped it and they just said WRX but nothing else, people were kind of taken aback by that. In general, that whole release of the VB, no matter how it's done since, I would say a majority of the people were looking at it negatively. And now we've
Yes.
totally flipped. Here, I mean, the occasional person is going, why did they release a hatchback? I hate hatchbacks. Like, that is not what the majority of the community wanted. They wanted hatchback, right? So we got it. And some people say, well, it's on the Crosstrek chassis, that's terrible. It's like, no, it's a good thing. It can be a good thing, especially with the performance upgrades that they've done. It's not a trim package. It's a full
Right.
different car. And the fact that
Yeah.
it's on a popular mass-produced chassis, that just means the cost is going to be that much lower.
And
so
it's like it could potentially be something where it comes out late 2026 even as a
yeah,
27
exactly.
model.
Exactly. Yeah, you start reinventing the wheel, and all of a sudden you're waiting 5 years for that to debut. So we could get it in the next couple of years. And so the point being is there's just so much positivity behind this. I'm really hoping that Subaru is monitoring all of this, and then they're at some point they have to make the decision and check the box of, is this going to production or not? And if it were me and I was looking from the exterior, I'd go, yeah, this is something people want. Let's put it into production.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think of like anybody that had anything really negative to say about the Performance B concept, and people, like I said, it's concerns that it's on an Impreza chassis, but I mean that's nothing new, and so that's really it. Like I think the fear there is like, is it just going to have like an Impreza engine, which I don't think
No,
could be the
no
case.
chance. Wouldn't
Yeah,
that be
and
hilarious
then
though if they just they pop the hood in like a week
oh,
and it's an NA
Art,
25?
do not say that, Art. Do not say that. Nope.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
even no. But then just like the big wing, but I mean if
Hmm.
they come out with an option that has like it doesn't have the wing or it's a smaller wing and it's such a big wing that like you figure like at best that's probably going to be an option and maybe the production version is going to
Hmm.
be smaller. So yeah, I mean I think like for Subaru to come out with a concept and have it be this positively received, they've got to be aware of that and that's got to be
Hmm.
significant. Yeah.
The biggest negative thing in general that I've seen, and I want to pin it and save it for our next conversation, and it will be a nice transition to talking about the aftermarket because that's something we didn't
Okay.
hit on for this car. I mean, it's too early to hit on it,
Yeah.
but the biggest negative thing is I don't like the look of the grille. I don't like how aggressive the front end is. I don't like the big wing, and to me, those aren't issues.
That can be
Those are
fixed. Those are
it's
easy.
not only can it be fixed, but that is what the aftermarket is all about. You buy things from the aftermarket because you go, well, I don't like how mild this grill is. I'd like to get a more aggressive one. Or I don't
Yeah.
like how square this is. I want the rounded version of it. And the aftermarket is so great because it picks up on those things right away. I mean, for Overtake, we comb through comments all the time and we get product ideas based on what people are talking about. Oh, I hate the way this functions or I hate the way
Yeah.
this looks. That's how products make it into production. So guess what? You think the front end is weird looking on this one? The aftermarket's going to give you 4 grill options and lip options and fog light covers. And then you think that wing is too big or too small or whatever. You're going to get every variation of wing. Just give it a
Yeah.
year.
Any kind of cosmetic. I mean, the perfect example are the plastic fender liners on the
Hmm.
VB. Like it
Hmm.
took a couple of months, and then there's body color liner or covers that are an
Right.
option. Like the aftermarket will deal with anything cosmetic fairly quickly if it really is that much of a pain point. So yeah,
Hmm.
I think I have a lot of confidence there. And like man, I cannot remember the last time Subaru had a concept that was this positively received. So yeah, I
Never
really hope
in
they're
my
paying
mind.
attention to that. No,
Yeah, I mean,
never.
I was the VAVB releases were lackluster for the most
Yeah,
part. I can't even think back to the GR, but as we were saying earlier, the hatch was not met with very good
no.
positive review. And before that, I mean, I'm too young to think about when the GD was introduced. So yeah, this is a monumental moment.
When the GD came out, nobody cared what it looked like because it was all about the performance. It
Right,
was it
right,
was
right.
it was what that was like to drive, the performance that it offered at the price point. I mean, like nobody cared. Nobody was talking about looks. It was all about the driving
Mm.
experience, the performance, what it was like to drive, and that was the selling point, and that's why it just did gangbusters until really like 15 or 16 when the VA came out, and for different reasons that WRX then I think beat those original like 2002, 2003 sales numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
So
well, yeah, there's lots more to talk about, and
yeah,
let's let it simmer for a couple of weeks and let's see what else
we
comes
gotta wait
out.
and
Maybe
see.
maybe next
Yeah,
pod we'll be talking about what engine's in it, because that's what I'm hoping they're really going to talk about.
Subaru's got to give us some numbers. They've got to give us some stats if they're going to come into production, and then we'll we need to know price, we need to know power. Like we gotta have the ballpark of those two things to really start to decide if this is going to make sense. And now it's just a waiting game. We've got to wait for Subaru to read us in, tell us what they're going to do. So
exactly right.
Cool. Well, Art, thank you so much for making the time, especially on short notice for this. Really appreciate it. Thanks to all you guys at home for watching and your support as always. Be sure to let us know what you think in the comments below. Did we miss something? Is there something else cool or something else that's sticking with you that you don't like? Leave it in the comments. And yeah, until next time, as always, stay tuned with Flatirons Tuning.
Thanks everyone for tuning in to the Flatiron Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. Once again, we'd like to let you know that your support is what makes this show possible. Be sure to check out our online store at flatironstuning.com for any of your aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts needs. And as always, stay tuned with Flatirons Tuning.